Today is a complete coil pack replacement from Ignition Projects. What a really cool product. You read through their information, really exciting and really excited to get this in my car. What we're also going to do at the same time though is I'm also going to walk through changing my spark plugs in my 2014 F32 435 as well. My car's at 49,000 miles, so it's about due for plug replacement anyway. Plus, to be fair, with these upgrades of the coil packs themselves, I definitely want to pair brand new spark plugs with it. Now, what I've done is there's two different roads you can generally go down with this. There are the factory OEM Bosch plugs, and then you can also go the NGK route. Now, what I've decided in this case is to stay with the Bosch. Now, that was based off of reading some additional research and actually some great feedback from one of my other partners. And they suggest the Bosch up to very, very high levels of boost. I haven't hit that level of boost yet at least yet on my car. So I'm going to stay with the Bosch for now. What I'm using are the straight Bosch plugs, and all of this information will be in the comments below with links, so you make sure you get the right product in the right place. Now, before we get started, I definitely want to recommend you have the right tools to do this job, or this job is going to be much harder than it should be, and this isn't a hard job to do. Now, if you're just doing the coil packs, you need almost no tools at all. If you're going to do the plugs, you definitely need some basic tools. All those will be listed in the comments below, and make sure to start with those on hand. With that said, it's really straightforward. Let's go out to the garage and get it done. All right, so if you've watched some of my other videos, you've probably noticed that my light is significantly improved. I'll link the light I'm using. I'm using a Ryobi shop light that actually has a cutout in the base that works perfectly to hang on the nose of your hood when your hood's up. I want to thank a good friend for that referral, and you can see that my light problem is significantly better than what I've had for better lighting and doing work here. I'll link it in the comments on the video. So when we get started here, you want to pull off your vanity cover first. Just gently pull up, and it'll come up and off, like that. Because what we want to be able to do is get to the coil packs, which you can already see right there in the motor. So you can already see several of them here, here, here. As you can see, there's 3 of them right there. We're also going to have to pull this foam as well. So now, my foam, this engine foam has been out several times for me already. Mine is torn. Yours hopefully won't be. So pull it out gently as you pull this out. Now, mine is torn in 2 places. Now, I've seen some folks that really aren't gentle when they pull this out, and it will tear. So I'm not sure why mine was torn. It was that way when I got the car. So you can see it's torn in 2 pieces. But set it aside. I also always make sure to pull it back, to put it back. Obviously, I've had this cover off a bunch of times in the projects that I've done, but I always put it back. I figure it's there for a reason, so I'm going to make sure to put it there. So as I do the project today, I'm going to add a couple of different things. Obviously, I'm doing these new coil packs from Ignition Projects, which is really cool. But my car's also at 49,000 miles, so it's about due for new plugs anyway. Plus, changing out the coil packs, I might as well change out the plugs as well. So you're going to see a combination of both pulling the plugs and the coil packs and replacing them. If you're just replacing the coil packs, you wouldn't need to do that extra step, but I'm going to in this case. So pulling the coil packs is really quite simple. You can see them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 back down the motor as we go through, and they'll just lift. Now, they've got these little pressure clips that you pull up on. There's a couple of different ways of getting at them. You can get at them with your fingers. Potentially, as you can see, this little clip pulls up, which separates away the plug as that comes away. So as you can see now, the plug is up and away. The coil pack should pull up. Now, there's a couple of different ways of coming at this. I very frequently find these coil packs are a little stubborn. So I've got my extension here, my socket extension, that I'm just going to put through the loop that I'm going to use for leverage to pull it up and away. There it is. Pops clean up and away. So then again, if you're just doing the coil packs, you can see how simple this is going to be. I'm going to walk through pulling all of the coil packs, and then I'm going to pull all the plugs as well. So I'm going to get that, and I'll show that in just a minute. So as always, I reserve the right to change my mind as I go through. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to do one at a time, because as I look at this, the last thing I want to do is confuse which one of the plugs for the coil packs goes where. And I really don't see a reason not to do these one at a time. Now the back 2 are going to be a little bit of a challenge because of some of the space, and it's pretty cramped. But I've decided I'm going to do one at a time. So what I've got is, you'll see I've got a universal joint here. I've got my extension, and I've got my thin-walled socket, which actually just came off down in the socket well. So let me put that back on there. So now, linked in the video comments will be a thin-walled spark plug socket. Make sure to get the right thing. I've seen some people use some long sockets before and have to buff down the outsides and other crazy stuff. Just buy the right thin-walled socket. That will make sure that you do this the right way. Okay, so I've got my universal joint, I've got my extension, I've got my thin-walled socket down on the bottom. I've got it here on the spark plug. We'll just break it away. There we go. And just work it out. And once it pops open, you can probably take your wrench off, potentially, but I'm going to keep it on in this case. Yeah, it's a little tight. Now I'm going to say this a couple of times as I go through this effort. What you don't need to do in this case, you don't need to use anti-seize compound on your spark plugs. So that's a change for me. I know for all of these years I've used anti-seize when I've changed out spark plugs, and you don't do that. There's multiple recommendations not to, and I've also confirmed that. I've got a local shop that I know really, really well, and I work with them all the time. So, and they also recommend not using anti-seize. So don't do that. So I'm going to walk this out, then I'll show putting the new plug in. So the plug's out. Hopefully you can see this clearly as we look at this here. So as you can see, so Bosch, they're branded BMW, so they are the original plugs for sure, which doesn't surprise me. Like I said, my car's got 49,000 miles on it. No reason to do the plugs prior. And they're definitely showing some wear. As I look at them, they're due to be done anyway. So that's a good thing. Okay, so we'll take that. Take your new plug. Now what I've done is I've got the exact same Bosch's. I don't have the BMW branded model just because I don't want to spend an extra 10, 15 bucks a plug just for that. Now, these thin-walled sockets will fit in. You can slot your plug directly in, and they fit really, really well. So you can see as you look at this, they will fit directly into your tool, so you should have no problem slotting them into the correct spot, right? So then we'll feed it back in and we'll put it on. The other thing I'm going to say obviously a lot as I go through this, that it's 17 torque pounds of pressure, so make sure that you have a torque wrench and it's set properly. Make sure that it's not 17 inch-pounds, it's 17 foot-pounds. Make sure you have the right tool for the job and it's set properly. All right, so let's fit this in here. Hopefully you don't stare at the back of my head here too much. So we just slowly slot this into place. And this universal joint just helps you give a little bit more wiggle room as this goes on. And again, I do not have anti-seize on. With all the recommendations I've read, that you shouldn't do that. So I don't have anti-seize on. So I've got my normal socket wrench at this point, and I'm just going to help drive this into place. But I'm not going to over tighten this. This is just to help me get this into place, into the right spot where I want it to be, and make sure that it's threading in straight and I've got a good handle on it. As soon as this gets to any place anywhere near tight, I'm going to switch over to my torque wrench. Now, what I've already set, and torque wrenches come in multiple settings. You can have them be in inch-pounds, you can have them be in foot-pounds, you can have them be in newtons. I mean, you name it. There's every conceivable option that you can have there. Make sure that it's set right. Most of the time it's in inch-pounds, and so you'll have to do the metric, right? So 17 foot-pounds works out to be about 204 inch-pounds. So I've got my torque wrench set properly. So it's set, you dial it to the correct setting, you secure it so you don't lose that. Okay, and then I'm going to set this on. And again, this may take a little bit of extra time. I just never want to do these properly. This is such a simple update and change that you can do for your car, let alone daily maintenance. And I encourage you to use this video for normal maintenance on your car as well. But the last thing you want to do is do it wrong. So as we get tighter here, And yeah, I've got my hand all the way up at the top just because this wrench is long. So now that we're here towards the end, I'm gonna go. Okay, so did you hear the click? I'm gonna do it again. That's the click. Don't go past the click. That's 17 foot-pounds right there. So your first spark plug's done. We're gonna do the next ones. So I'm gonna do the next four. Next three. 1, 2, 3, all right in a row. They're the exact same process. But what we're gonna do is we'll show the first of the Ignition Projects coils. This is really cool. I'm super excited about this. So this coil pack, there's a little notch right here in the metal, a little groove, and you can see the groove on the coil pack. That's the orientation it should go in. So the coil pack just simply slides into place, press down, make sure it's all the way in, make sure that the groove, the tongue on the coil pack is in that groove. I've got this little lock up. I'm gonna take the plug, put it into place, slowly walk that snap down. And give it a good solid push to make sure that it's on. So there you go. So it's really that simple as you go through this, and I've zoomed in a bit so to make sure that you can see it. All you have to do is do this 6 times for an F32 because it's a 6-cylinder. So we're going to do this 6 times. So I'm going to do the next 3, then I'll show them, and then I'll show the next 2 after that in detail because they're a little bit harder because we start running out of space. We got to move things a little bit to get there, but it really is that simple. I'm going to change my camera angle a little bit here in a second, but I wanted to show what we've done so far. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All the front 4 are done. All the plugs have been changed. The coil packs are in, and again, they're all facing the right direction with the notch in the little notch in the metal. They're all facing the right way with the right plugs in. All of the locking clamps are down, and I press firmly on each one to make sure that they're well seated down onto the plug. Now, the one other thing you can also do when you put the new plug in, you can take, and I'll use one of the old plugs here as an example. You can put a little bit of dielectric grease here on the top to increase to make sure you have a good spark there. I hear mixed opinions on doing that. I chose not to in this case. I think it will be fine. But again, what I did not do is I didn't put on any anti-seize. Now, a couple of things to point out here really quickly as we get to the back 2, which are going to be the ones that take a little bit longer than normal, or longer than the others. First of all, ignore the extra wires here. So I'm running the Active Auto Work Jump 8 or Active 8 jump box. So I've got some additional cables that you may or may not have. If you don't have one of these, I recommend it. They're really cool. But we've got this cable harness that comes over the top here and obscures the back 2. Now this is where on your extensions you're going to want to have a couple of extensions. You're going to want to have like a 3-inch extension with that universal joint, and maybe like a 6-inch extension for the front ones. I'll show you when we get there, but we want to undo these clips. So we've got the light gray in front, we've got the black in back, and what I'm going to do in this case is just pry back on this clip to give a little bit of extra space, and as you can see it comes up and away. So what I think I'm going to be able to do in this case is just walk these out of the way to be able to get to this back plug. And the back one, I think I should be able to be okay. Now, worst case scenario, as you can see, this sits on this metal harness right here with just a Torx bolt. So or metal harness, this metal plate. If I need to, I'm just going to pull this and pull this plate out of the way. And I can also unplug these and set the plugs and pull them aside. I try to do as little extra work as possible. If something can stay intact and you can get the work done, great. If not, take it apart. So now in this case, as I look at this metal plate sits right over the top of this 5th spark plug. So I really think I'm going to need to take that out. So I'm going to grab the correct Torx bit and take that out. I'm also going to change the camera so you can see a little deeper in there and see what we're looking at. So I've decided, I think you could probably do this without unplugging these, but I'm going to do it anyway to get them out of the way. So you should be able to see pretty clearly here as we're looking at this right here at this plug. So what you're going to do is I've undone the front gray one. This is the back one. There's a little pressure clip right here. You press down on that clip and gently pull back, and this plug will walk itself back and come loose. Just like that. And you can see that harness comes away. There you go, like that. So now again, gray in front, black in back. So make sure that you match them. The other way you can match is that the gray has this blue plug, and in the base of this plug is blue, this is black, and this is black. So make sure, if you do undo these, make sure you put them back in the right order. often with these. They're keyed to only go in one way, but the last thing you want to do is screw something up. Okay, so now we've got this plate here. This is a T30 Torx. Now mine is already really, really loose. Now my driver here is really not at the greatest angle, but it's loose enough that I think I can just back it out as is, like this. And this will get this plate out of the way. Make sure not to drop any bolts or anything. There you go. So now this plate's out of the way and we can very cleanly get to those back two plugs. Now, same process with these. What you can do is, I've got a flat bladed screwdriver, just to lift up on that locking plate, like that. So the lock is now up. You can back the plug off. Hopefully you can see. It's a little difficult as we get back into this cranny back here, but it's the exact same process as the front four. Now one could argue you could start with the hardest ones first and work from the back forward. And I could definitely understand that. You know, you deal with the hard ones and then you deal with the easy ones, and the easy ones go that much more simple. It's more simply because, you know, you've already done the hard ones and you're used to that. But also at the same time, if you've never done this before, you can get familiar with the process here working on the fronts, because the fronts are easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, they're super, super simple. These are exactly the same, just with a lot less space. And you can see this lock here, and the sixth one back here in the back is going to be really a bit of a challenge to get to. But the good news there is that the tips on the coil packs are flexible, so they can bend a little bit when they come out. Now, these coil packs sometimes can be really, really tight when they come out. So you can see that one's out, which is not a problem at all. Now, when you are doing this, now I've got my 4-inch extension on right now, which may be a bit long, but we're going to find out here in a second. Okay, so I'll take this, put this down in here. Yeah, so it's going to be a bit long. So I'm going to get my 3-inch extension. So because I'm going to need the 3-inch for both as we go through the rest of this. The other thing that I might do is when I get this, I might pull the coil pack on the back as well, because I've got more room to move with this, with the 5th coil pack out. So I'll probably do the 6th, the back one as well, just to get that done and work back forward while I have more room. I'm going to get my 3-inch extension. I have the back coil pack out, so this is where you can see you need this universal joint to be able to get around that corner to reach back in here. So you can see how little space you have to work and fit that down in there. See, so now you can see how a 3-inch extension is pretty much vital. I was using my 6-inch extension earlier as I went through this. So you can see how you got to have a 6 and a 3. You can do it all with a 3 in theory, but 6 is nice for the outer ones. So you just bend it around that corner. Now I've also seen people who can use a 4 as well. So they'll take a 3-inch extension and a 1-inch extension to get just a little bit more room to get that in there, because this is pretty darn tight as you look at it. And getting that first initial break over to get the spark plug to start to spin when you take it out can be a little bit of additional pressure. So you can use a 3-inch extension, or if you have a 3+1, you can do that as well. I've definitely seen people do that, just to give you a little bit more room, so you can be a little bit more clear of the rest of the motor. So I'm going to get this spark plug out, and then I'll show you how to walk the coil pack in. It's a little difficult to see, but it's a difficult angle to show. Both back plugs have been changed. I've did them both right in a row. Those back two probably took the same amount of time as the front 4, which is, you know, where some of the time sink in this comes in doing this job. Again, I used my thin-walled spark plug socket and a 3-inch extension, the universal joint, and my wrench, then plus the torque wrench set to 17 foot-pounds to set both spark plugs. Now, I think it might be slightly easier if you actually had a 1-inch extension as well. So you've to 3+1 to get your wrench a little bit higher than all of these pieces, because they really do want to sit and be in the way. But it's able to get done. It just takes a little bit of time. Those two take the majority of the time in doing this job. So now, the one thing that's nice is that the tip on this is flexible. So this is how you're going to be able to get this in. So forgive me as I lean around here. Let's lean here. So all you're going to do is just take this, guide it in, and again, this tip is flexible, so you can make it around that corner and get the coil pack in. There again, you're going to have that notch. So make sure that the notch is lined up properly and you get a good seat out of this coil as it goes down into place. So give it a good solid push to get it into place. And straighten mine out a little bit. I don't think it's seated quite all the way. So I'm going to make sure that that's seated down all the rest of the way. Let's get the other one as well while we're here. Definitely want to show that as well. So here's my other coil pack. Now, I mentioned earlier doing these one at a time because of making sure not to screw these up. Now, if you notice that your wire bundles are really kind of coming in a sequential order. So can you do more than one of these at a time? Absolutely. I'm just a big fan of being really careful as we do this. And yes, I'm casting a shadow pretty badly here, sorry. So this coil pack, again, is going to go in this orientation because of that notch. Get that down, get this and set it in nice and firmly. You want to make sure all these cables are out of the way. You're not hanging up on any of the cables as you put this in. So we're going to seat both, I'm going to plug in both, and then we'll do one last check as we walk through, and I'll walk through up really, really close to show it. Okay, so if you give a moment with the camera, it's going to be a little shaky here because I have it in my hand. That's the back coil pack. It's all the way down and flush. Notch is in place, cable's in, the lock is down. We've got the next one in order here. You can see it's in place, locked down and ready to go. And as we walk forward, we've got the rest as well. So all the way up to the front one here. So now what we're going to do is we have to put that wiring harness back in place. We got to put that plate back on and the wiring harness in place, and you're almost done. All right, so this plate for the wiring harness is back in T30 bolt here. Again, these extra cables I'm going to pull out of the way. I pulled my cables off here to get them out of the way. So again, make sure that you match them up correct for correct. So we've got black plug to black plug, which is here. So walk that right back into place, get until you get a good solid snap. Snap it back into the silver clip harness. Okay, blue plug to blue plug, which is that front gray one. Snap it back into place and set that back down in. Okay, so now at this point, I always believe in double checking everything before you truly button up. So I've applied enough down pressure on all of these coil packs to make sure that they're seated really, really well. All the locks are down, everything is down. We have all of the spark plugs in at 17 foot-pounds, which is also 23 newtons, depending on your torque wrench that you look at. You can do either. So those are all set. Like I said, this is a pretty straightforward and simple project to be able to do. Now, changing your spark plugs in at the dealership is very frequently hundreds of dollars, if not $300 or $400, which doesn't make sense to me. So not only am I doing this upgrade with the ignition coils from Ignition Projects, which is really cool, and I'm super excited about that, but then I'm also changing my plugs as well, which my car is due for anyway because of its age. So really all we have to do now is button it back up, which is putting this engine foam back in, which takes a little bit of doing to get back in. Like I said, again, mine is torn. Work it all back into place. You can see the posts that are here and here will come up through the foam in the appropriate places. Work it back in, and then put your vanity cover back on. I'll show that right at the end to make sure that we're done. But at this point, it's just cleanup and we're done. Always do one last check before you button up completely. Obviously, I walked through all of the technical components a few minutes ago. Check your workspace for any tools. This is such a minimal tool job that you probably shouldn't have too many out, but make sure you don't have any tools left out. Nothing fell down in. The foam is in place, and you can tell because you can tell the posts are coming up correctly through the foam. And then your cover just snaps right back in place. And I usually use the front oil as the front guide, and then just bang, snap it right back in place. All right, from this side of the car, we're all done. All we have to do now is fire it up, make sure it takes it for a test drive, make sure it runs well, and we're good to go. All right, back from a successful test drive, took the car out, started instantly, drove really smoothly, took about a 10 or 15 minute drive around my neighborhood and brought it back. No codes, no problems, no fault, everything's super nice and smooth. I'm going to be really excited to see how the product improves my car over time, especially with the new plugs in as well. And if I get an opportunity, I will be dynoing my car here in the future. I want to do that in general. So a couple of things to stress as to wrap up this project. Make sure you have the right tools. A correct thin-walled spark plug socket is really, really important, and they're not very expensive. So please make sure to get that. That universal joint helps as well. You're going to need a torque wrench. You're going to need a 3-inch and probably a 6-inch extension as well. Now, as a little added that might help if you had that 3-inch extension with a 1-inch extension as well to make it 4, you can clear on those two back plugs that are a little bit harder to get maneuver. You're going to get to them, I think, a little bit more easily. I want to stress the torque wrench though. Make sure that it's set correctly. 17 pounds or 23 newtons is the correct torque for your plugs going in. Don't make sure they're not too low and not too high. Setting your torque wrench is really, really important. Now, there are a lot of auto parts stores that actually rent tools these days. So if you didn't want to go out and buy a torque wrench, which isn't necessarily a bad thing to have in your garage, you can actually go and rent them, where you can go get them, rent them, and then they'll return your deposit when you come back. I actually have 2 torque wrenches out in my garage. They have different ranges of torque that you can actually put on them. One of them is one of the rentals from my local tool shop, because if you don't return it, they just keep your deposit. And the price was about the same, and I really needed it when I got it. So, highly recommend it. I really want to thank Ignition Projects for this. What an exciting project to do, and I really am excited to see over the next days, weeks, and months the difference that it brings to my car. Now, the installation itself, like I said, is very, very simple. If you're just doing the ignition coils, you can get this done easily in under half an hour, probably as little as 15 minutes, because you're just unplugging those coils, pulling them out, putting the new ones back in, plugging it right back in, and you're off and good to go. Keep in mind, take a look at your service records, figure out if you need new plugs or not when you do it. I definitely did with my car at 49,000 miles and thought it was the right idea to change plugs and coils at the same time so we get a good clean start on that all the way across the board. So if you need to change your plugs, definitely do it at the same time. Just be careful as you do it, take it one step at a time, and it's really a simple job. All in all, I think the job could be done in probably, including plugs, probably less than an hour out in your garage. What a great way to save a lot of money. For the F32, generally taking your car in to get your plugs replaced, it's easily $400 to $500, which is just ridiculous, so don't do it. All the tools and components you need will be listed below, and great places to buy them, as well as the link for the Ignition Projects coil pack for this car. Please click subscribe, please click like. I welcome any questions or comments. I answer all that I can, and I look forward to seeing you on my next project.